If you want to become someone that dominates every single writing assignment you receive, there's one simple principle that you need to understand, and that is that your grades can be traced back to how well you understood what you were being asked to do. So think about it like this. When your understanding of something is incorrect, your actions are going to reflect that later on. There's no way around it. So when it comes to academic writing, if you don't know what you're doing, well, you're either going to miss points for answering objectives incorrectly or not answering them at all. Now, the reverse is also true. When your understanding is correct, you put yourself in a position for success in which you're most likely to succeed. Since you're here right now, this tells me that your success matters to you, which is why I'm revealing my special smart student method for understanding your assignments. This method is what I like to call the what and the how. The what is what you're going to look for first, and it's simply finding what you're supposed to write about. Then once you have that, you're going to locate the how, and the how indicates how you're going to write about the what. Now let's take a look at this in action. Here's a typical writing assignment. Nothing fancy, standard instructions, but we're going to start with step 1 of the Smart Student Method, which is locating the what. And here we are. Okay, so first off, the mistake that a lot of students will make is they will read through these instructions, starting at the top, going all the way down to the bottom, reading it front to back like a book. The problem with that is that it becomes overwhelming because if you notice, there's a lot of information here. This is why locating the what first is so critical. Now, to make this super simple, I have some tips for locating the what, and that is to locate the ask. And the giveaway is always in the wording because you're going to see phrases like, this paper should include, this project should consist of, your job is to, you're being asked to. So coming back to our assignment instructions, we're looking for the ask, aka the actionable part of what we're supposed to do. Now, my eye would automatically go to this bolded sentence right here that says your review will analyze. So there, right there, that is the indicators in the wording. So right now, you know you're writing a review that's going to analyze this criteria right here. Now, another key indicator I like to point out is to find the page count because the what is always going to be somewhere around that. So not only are you writing a review that's going to analyze this criteria, but it's an 8 to 10 page review of your choice of any film in the American Film Institute's top 100 list. That's a mouthful. So let's go ahead and put these side by side together into one consolidated ask. So all of that together, what you're doing for this assignment is writing an 8 to 10 page essay that analyzes how well a chosen film reflects what is scientifically understood about human interactions. Before we move on to the how, let's take a look at another set of instructions. So first off, note how this is a much smaller assignment, but the task remains the same. We're looking for the actionable part. We read through a little bit, we're looking for those indicators, and quite frankly, here's what we're being asked to do. We're being asked to write a 2 to 3 page paper that evaluates the role of leadership in terms of developing a more sustainable and socially responsible business strategy. Easy. Same thing, let's look at one more assignment. So we're back to a longer, more complex assignment, lots of instructions here. It's the same thing we did before. We need to locate what we're being asked to do before we worry about anything else. And so here, it's actually quite simple. What we're being asked to do is write a research proposal design around a specific management problem. All right, so now that we know exactly what we're doing, we need to find out how we're doing it. In other words, in the first example, we have 8 to 10 pages to fill. What are we going to fill those 8 to 10 pages with? My tips for locating the how is to look for some form of a list, either a list of objectives, a set of criteria, a numbered amount of points that you need to make within your paper to get the full marks. Here we are back at our first assignment instructions. We know what we're doing. Now we're looking for that list of how we're fulfilling these 8 to 10 pages. And quite frankly, right under here, I see a numbered list, so that's automatically where my attention is going to hone into. As you read through each of these line items, you'll notice that there's specific objectives that each of them are asking you to do. Now, note how these are written in almost a paragraph formatting, meaning that there's still a lot of material. When you run into this, I suggest creating your list of hows in summarized, concise bullet points of each of these. So here's an example of how I would do it for this example. Number 1, you're being asked to write a summary of the film. Number 2, you're then going to write an evaluation of 3 scenes that accurately represent social psychology research in theory. Next, you're going to write a separate evaluation of 3 scenes that you determine are in some way inaccurate or atypical according to social psychology research in theory, in which you're going to move on to number 4, which is going to be an explanation of the plausibility of the whole story from a social psychology perspective. And then finally, number 5, you're going to end with a conclusion that's a concise summary of the key points. Note how there is a number 6 in the instructions, but I have not included a number 6 over in our hows. The reason is because number 6 is simply reminding you that you need to include a reference page and citations formatted according to APA style. So as you can see, your hows are only going to include the actionable parts of how you're going to fulfill your what. Now, let's go ahead and move on to our smaller assignment, where here, again, we know what we're doing. Now we need to know how we're doing it. And quite frankly, this one is pretty easy since they're listed out in this nice, neat bullet formatting. So what this would tell me is that what I'm doing is writing a 2 to 3 page paper, and how I'm going to fulfill those 2 to 3 pages is by selecting a public or private organization. I'm then going to discuss 2 leadership styles. I'm going to provide 2 to 3 examples of organizations. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with an analysis on how these leadership characteristics and organizational practices can be integrated at the organization I selected. So as you can see, even though this assignment is a fraction in length as the previous one, the what and the how is still the same thing. Let's take a look at our last example just to solidify this even more. So we know what we're doing, and that is writing a research proposal designed around a specific management problem. How we're doing it? Well, it's going to be this bolded list right here, in that we're going to write an introduction, a problem statement. We're then going to write a section about a research question, research rationale, and hypothesis, which is going to move us on to our literature review, followed by our research method and design, data collection process, data collection technique, data collection instruments, and then finally, we're going to write about ethical research practices. Now, what I would do next is I would go through each of these sections and add all the subpoints I need to make, so that way I'm crystal clear on exactly what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, which I took the liberty of including right here. And if you're thinking, man, that looks like a lot of stuff to cover, well, quite frankly, it is, because this is a longer project. But still, you've managed to take this long research proposal and simplify it because you know what you're doing and how you're doing it. Albeit it's a lot of things you have to do, but you can go section by section, criteria by criteria, and focus in on what you're supposed to do one section at a time. Now, the next step is taking this clarity and creating an outline and structure for your paper that ensures you do exactly what you're being asked to do, which if you'd like to see how I do this, go ahead and check out one of these videos next.